For months, I had convinced myself that I was living inside a storybook romance. Ethan was everything I thought I had ever wanted. Kind, attentive, and charming in a way that made me forget the rough edges of my past. With him, the world seemed softer, brighter, like maybe, just maybe, I had finally escaped the weight of where I came from. Every laugh we shared, every quiet promise he whispered, stitched together an illusion of safety I clung to with both hands. So when he invited me to meet his family for dinner at their estate, I told myself it was the natural next step. I practiced my smile in the mirror, pressed my one elegant dress, and reminded myself I deserved to be there just as much as anyone. My chest fluttered with nerves as we drove up the endless driveway lined with lantern-lit oaks, the mansion glowing in the twilight like something out of a dream. The dream shattered the moment his father opened his mouth. Richard was tall, immaculately dressed, his presence filling the room before he even sat down. His eyes skimmed me as though I were some object Ethan had dragged in from the gutter. Then, with a smirk curling his lips, he muttered the words that cracked me open like glass. Street garbage. The entire table went silent. The clink of crystal, the faint shuffle of silverware, all of it froze in the air. Heat rose up my neck, shame burning my skin. I looked at Ethan, begging for him to say something, anything. But his gaze slid away, fixed firmly on his untouched plate. That was the first betrayal. Not the insult itself, but the silence of the man who swore he loved me. The days after that dinner felt like moving through a fog that clung to me no matter where I went. I couldn't taste food, couldn't focus on work, couldn't escape the echo of Richard's voice spitting those words across the polished oak table. Street garbage. They weren't just words. They were chains pulling me back into the shadows of everything I had fought to leave behind. Ethan tried, in his own weak way, to smooth things over. He came to my apartment with flowers, with his soft apologies. He didn't mean it, he whispered, brushing my cheek as if affection could erase humiliation. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the one that betrayed doubt. Did some part of him believe it too? That question lodged in my chest like a splinter, impossible to ignore. At night, I replayed the scene again and again. The way the servers shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to notice. The quick, pitying glance from Ethan's mother before she lowered her eyes. And most of all, Richard, leaning back in his chair, smug satisfaction gleaming in his eyes, proud of the wound he had carved into me. He hadn't just insulted me, he had enjoyed it. But what tormented me most wasn't Richard's cruelty. It was Ethan's silence. The man who claimed he loved me hadn't raised a word in my defense. He hadn't even looked at his father with anger. He had let the insult hang there, heavy and suffocating, as though my dignity wasn't worth protecting. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it hides in the quiet, in the spaces where someone should have spoken and didn't. And that silence cut deeper than any insult ever could. When Ethan invited me back to his family's estate, I hesitated. Every nerve in me screamed not to go, but some desperate part of me wanted to prove Richard wrong, to prove to myself that I wasn't the outsider he painted me to be. I told myself this time would be different. I wore my best dress, steadied my nerves, and convinced myself I could handle it. The mansion loomed even larger than I remembered, its endless halls echoing with quiet wealth. While Ethan excused himself to take a call, I wandered through the house, trying not to feel small against the polished marble and gilded frames. That's when I heard it. Voices behind the heavy oak doors of Richard's study. I knew I shouldn't listen, but the tone in Richard's voice pulled me closer. It was sharp, cutting, dripping with disdain. She's using you, Ethan. Girls like that only want one thing: money. My breath caught. I pressed myself against the wall, waiting, praying for Ethan's voice to rise in my defense. But instead came silence. Then, a hesitation so long and heavy it felt like the floor shifted beneath me. Finally, his voice, low, uncertain. Dad, it's not like that. But even as he spoke, there was no conviction. No fire, just hesitation. That pause sliced through me deeper than Richard's insult. If Ethan truly believed in me, Wouldn't he have defended me without doubt? Wouldn't he have stood tall, unwavering? Instead, he let Richard's words hang in the air, unchallenged, poisoning everything between us. I slipped away before they could catch me listening, my heart pounding like it wanted to tear out of my chest. That night, the illusion of love began to crumble, and I wondered if I had been fighting for a place I never truly had. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The weight of Richard's words and Ethan's silence pressed down on me until I finally burst. That night, as we sat in his car outside my apartment, the streetlights throwing long shadows across the dashboard, I turned to him. "Why didn't you defend me?" My voice trembled, not with fear, but with anger sharpened by heartbreak. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to make things worse. My dad, he's difficult. You don't understand what it's like dealing with him." I stared at him in disbelief. Make things worse for who? For you? Because it was already worse for me. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. His words felt like excuses, thin shields to cover his cowardice. "I love you," he insisted, desperation flickering in his eyes. "I'm not like him." But love isn't just whispered promises in the dark. It's action when it counts. And when the moment had come, he had chosen silence. That silence screamed louder than anything Richard had said. I tried to listen, tried to believe him, but doubt seeped into every syllable. His hesitation, his reluctance, his fear of standing up to his father, it poisoned the love we had built. I realized then that betrayal doesn't always wear the face of infidelity. Sometimes, it wears the face of someone who looks away when you need them most. That night, I didn't cry in front of him. I simply opened the door, stepped into the cool night air, and let the distance between us grow. What cracked wasn't just my trust. It was the foundation of everything we had been building together. And once cracks appear, they never truly disappear. I thought I was alone in my humiliation, carrying the sting of Richard's cruelty and Ethan's silence like a private scar. But that night, as I slipped out into the garden for air, I realized someone had been watching all along. The estate's garden was vast and elegant, lined with roses that climbed trellises and fountains that whispered in the dark. I sat on a stone bench, the night wind cooling the tears on my cheeks. I didn't hear footsteps at first, only the soft rustle of silk before a voice broke the silence. "He was wrong to say that to you." I turned, startled, and saw Marianne, Ethan's mother, standing there in her pale evening gown. Her face was drawn, her eyes carrying a tiredness that went beyond the evening's events. She looked at me not with pity, but with a quiet understanding that pierced through my shame. "You deserve better," she whispered, settling beside me. Her voice wavered, but her words held a weight that felt different from Ethan's hollow apologies. I didn't know what to say. Gratitude tangled with suspicion. Was she only being kind out of guilt? But as I met her eyes, I saw something deeper. Resignation. A woman who had been in my place before, silenced and diminished by the man who now tormented me. In that moment, I realized Marianne wasn't just offering me comfort. She was offering me truth. Richard's cruelty wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was who he was. And Ethan's weakness wasn't temporary. It was inherited. Her words planted something dangerous in me. Not hope, not even anger, but courage. Courage to stop begging for a seat at their table. Courage to stand on my own, even if it meant standing against them all. After that night in the garden with Marianne, I carried her words with me like a hidden flame. But instead of burning away my doubts, the fire only illuminated new shadows. Ethan was changing, and not in ways I could ignore. He grew distracted, distant. His once constant attention turned into half-hearted texts and excuses for why he couldn't see me. He started working late, or so he claimed, though his eyes avoided mine whenever I asked too many questions. The warmth that had once drawn me to him now flickered, unstable, as though he was already halfway gone. It wasn't just my imagination. At dinner, I caught him staring at his phone under the table, lips twitching into a smile he hadn't shown me in weeks. When I asked who it was, he muttered, "Just work." But the lie was paper thin. One evening, while he showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I told myself not to look. I told myself I wasn't the kind of woman who needed proof to believe in betrayal, but my shaking hands betrayed me as I unlocked the screen and read the message glowing across it. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was unforgettable. My stomach dropped. My heart fractured. Every ounce of courage I had gathered turned to ash in my chest. Betrayal wasn't just a silence at dinner or a hesitation in defense. This was flesh and blood, undeniable. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the words until the water stopped running. By the time Ethan stepped out, towel slung around his neck, I wasn't the same woman who had entered that room. The storm had broken. And now, nothing could stop the flood that was coming. I didn't cry. Not right away. The moment I read that message, something inside me froze solid, like ice forming over a lake. My hands trembled, my breath came sharp, but no tears fell. Betrayal, I realized, doesn't always break you into sobs. It hardens you, makes you cold, makes you prepare for war. So I waited. I sat there on the edge of the bed, Ethan's phone still glowing in my hand when he walked out of the bathroom, steam rolling behind him. His towel hung low around his waist, his hair dripping onto his bare shoulders. He looked so ordinary, so familiar, that for a fleeting second I almost wanted to believe the lie again. But then his eyes landed on the phone, and I watched the blood drain from his face. "Where did you—" he started, voice faltering. I held up the screen. "Who is she?" My voice was steady, sharper than I felt. "It's not what you think," he blurted, moving toward me. I laughed, a sound that felt foreign in my throat. "Not what I think?" The message literally says last night was unforgettable, unless you've suddenly started hosting secret midnight board meetings. "Ethan, I think it's exactly what I think." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Silence. That same silence that had followed me since the night at the mansion. But this one was worse. This was the silence of a guilty man. "Say something." I snapped, my voice cracking at last. "Tell me I'm wrong, tell me it's not true. Give me one reason not to walk out that door right now." But he couldn't. His lips trembled, his eyes darted away, and I had my answer. The tears finally came then, hot and bitter, not because I still loved him, though part of me did, but because I realized the man I thought would fight for me hadn't even fought to keep me. I stood, slipping past him, my shoulder brushing his damp skin. For a moment, he reached out as if to stop me, but his hand fell back to his side. Cowardice again. The door closed behind me with a heavy click, and I knew it wasn't just the end of the night, it was the end of us. Heartbreak has a strange way of turning into fire. For days after I walked out on Ethan, I drifted between numbness and rage, but eventually the numbness faded, leaving only the rage. I replayed every insult, every silence, every betrayal, until the pain hardened into something sharper. Purpose. Richard had called me street garbage, as though I were beneath him. Ethan had betrayed me, as though my love was disposable. They thought I was powerless, that I would fade quietly into the background of their perfect, polished world. But they didn't know me. Not really. It began with Marianne. She found me again, away from the estate this time, reaching out with a trembling hand and eyes that looked more like a warning than comfort. "Richard isn't just cruel," she whispered, her voice low, fearful. "He's corrupt. His empire is built on lies. If you want to protect yourself, maybe even end this, I can show you." I should have walked away. I should have said no, but instead I listened. And what she revealed lit a fuse in me I couldn't put out. Contracts signed under false names, shell companies laundering money, illegal deals hidden beneath layers of power and wealth. She handed me copies, evidence that could shatter everything Richard had built. Evidence that, in the wrong hands, could ruin him forever. And I knew exactly whose hands they belonged in. Mine. I stared at those papers for hours that night, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. For every insult, for every betrayal, for every time they made me feel small, I now held the power to bring them crashing down. I wasn't street garbage. I was the fire waiting to consume their empire. All I had to do was strike the match. I accepted the invitation for what it was. Bait. but I dressed like a woman who had learned to wear armor. Clean lines, nothing flashy, a smile practiced until it felt like glass. Marianne had insisted I come. "Let him see you one last time," she said, voice steady. "Let him enjoy his cruelty while you finish the work." There was a pity in her eyes, yes, but also relief, as if a great weight was about to be set down. The dining room glittered under crystal chandeliers. Richard presided at the head of the table with that same smug composure, the sort that had once unseated me with a single phrase. Ethan sat 2 places away, hands folded, eyes flicking to me like a man waiting for a verdict. Around us, their world hummed on. Polite conversation, soft laughter, the clinking of silverware. I let them talk. I let Richard make the jests, watched his mouth curl with the same cruel ease. Every barb ricocheted off my smile. Inside, the papers Marianne had given me were heavy and real. The envelope I carried under my clutch felt like a loaded gun. At dessert, with coffee poured and the conversation waning, I reached across the table and slid the envelope toward Richard as if absent-minded. The room didn't catch on until he opened it. The first page had his signature. The second showed shell accounts, routed through names he'd used to buy silence. The third was an email chain with proofs of a bribe he'd orchestrated to drown out a whistleblower. His face changed color in slow motion, beet red then ashen, while the smugness fled like an animal scenting danger. "Is this?" he began, voice cracking. Marianne's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. Ethan's face collapsed, anger, fear, disbelief wavering like a struck bell. "You can't," he managed. But the legalese she'd printed and the dates, the wire transfers, the receipts, there was no defense left. For the first time in a long time, the room was silent for the right reasons. Someone exclaimed, someone else fumbled with a phone. I watched Richard try to salvage a smile and fail. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. No longer a towering patriarch, but a man exposed, his clothes full of holes. "Street garbage?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, my voice calm and final. "Funny thing, garbage is what you are for hiding in the corners while others clean up your mess." The laughter that followed was not from him. It was from the hollow, stunned chorus of a man's life unspooling. And when the first guest stood and walked away, I felt the empire around him begin to crumble. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within a week, headlines screamed of Richard's downfall. Investigations opened, contracts collapsed, partners distanced themselves. The empire he had spent decades building turned to dust almost overnight. His smug name, once whispered with respect in wealthy circles, now dripped with scandal in every paper and broadcast. And yet, the victory didn't taste as sweet as I thought it would. Ethan came to me once after everything unraveled. His suit was wrinkled, his voice hoarse. He wasn't the polished golden boy anymore. He was just a man stripped bare. "You destroyed him," he said, eyes hollow. "Do you even know what you've done?" I wanted to scream that yes, I knew exactly what I'd done, that his father deserved every ounce of ruin. But looking at Ethan, I realized the collateral damage was greater than I'd imagined. With Richard gone, Ethan had lost more than money. He lost his inheritance, his place in that glittering world, even the version of himself he clung to. My revenge hadn't just burned Richard. It had scorched Ethan too. And here was the cruelest twist of all. Despite the betrayal, despite the infidelity, a part of me still loved him. Love doesn't vanish neatly. It lingers, bleeding, even when you try to cut it out. Watching him stand there, defeated, I felt a pang of the old Ethan, the one who had once made me believe in forever. But forever had ended the night I found that message. And no matter how much it hurt, I knew I couldn't go back. "I didn't destroy him," I whispered. "He destroyed himself. I just stopped covering for it." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He only looked at me like I was a stranger, and in that moment, maybe I was. When he left, I stood at the window, watching the city lights blink in the distance. Revenge had given me power, but it had also left me standing alone in the ruins. Heartbreak doesn't vanish with justice, it deepens. And yet I didn't regret striking the match. Because sometimes the only way to rise is to burn the bridges that kept you chained. Months passed. The headlines moved on. The world found new scandals. but I was still living in the quiet aftershock of the storm I had unleashed. Richard's empire was gone, picked apart by investigators and rivals. Marianne filed for divorce, slipping away like a bird finally freed from its gilded cage. And Ethan, he disappeared into the background of a life without wealth or status, too proud to call me again, too broken to face what we both knew was true. And me? I learned what it meant to rebuild from nothing, but this time, the nothing felt like freedom. No longer was I the girl sitting silently at a table, waiting for someone to defend me. No longer was I street garbage. I was the woman who had walked into a den of wolves and walked out with their fangs in my hands. But there's something no one tells you about revenge. It doesn't heal you. It doesn't erase the nights you cried, the humiliation, or the ache of betrayal. Justice is sharp, but it doesn't mend broken hearts. What it does give you is clarity, and clarity, I discovered, is worth more than any illusion of love. Sometimes I still dream of Ethan, not the man who betrayed me, but the boy I thought he was. In those dreams, he laughs with me again, holds me as if the world isn't cruel. Then I wake, and the ache is there, but softer now, like a scar I can trace without flinching. I don't hate him anymore. I don't even hate Richard. Hatred chains you, and I've cut my chains. What I carry now isn't bitterness. It's strength. Life has taught me this. We are not defined by what others call us, not by insults hurled across glittering dinner tables, nor by betrayals whispered in the dark. We are defined by what we choose to do when we are broken, and I chose to rise.